Hello, hello. Abbas IS Academy welcomes you. Are you listening? Tell me whether you are able to listen to me or not. Okay, fine. Today we are going to analyze two editorials. These two editorials are on the same topic, and the topic is farmers' protest. Here we will see how the viewpoints of the editorial changes and it gets reflected in editorial. We have chosen Economic Times editorial and the Hindu editorial. The headline of the Economic Times editorial is "The Farms Protest a Wee Bit Too Much," and Hindu's editorial's headline is "Grain and Chaff" or Chaff. We can see apathy, sympathy, and empathy in writing editorial today. How in the same context we are behaving in two different ways. So let us begin. And as usual, we will start with the words, vibrant words, which are very useful in understanding editorial. And apart from that, it will enhance your vocabulary. And that is the essence of any writing. So first word is an idiom, a wee bit, a wee bit. I am writing here so that you can identify with these words and phrases and idioms, and I am not using a typed material here. A wee bit is an idiom and the meaning is by a very small amount. By a very small amount or to a very small degree. To a very small degree. And we will come across its use in the editorial. Another word is maximalist. In fact, this word has its origin in Bolshevik, that is related to some sort of revolution. The maximalist, a person who favors a person who favors direct or revolutionary action to achieve a goal. This maximalist has its origin in Bolshevik. In toto, it is very important word. In toto means totally, entirely, completely. Coming to next word, cloak. We all know cloak is covering what we wear, wrap, or to hide or disguise. Cloak, to hide or disguise. Another very common word is pantomime. Pantomime. A lot of us or colleges participate in pantomime where you express yourself by acting without yourself by acting without speaking. But the meaning here is silly or exaggerated. Another word is per se, by itself. Per se means by itself or in itself or essentially or in essence. These are the meaning of per se. We have another word that is phrasal verb foist on. Foist on means to force somebody to accept something they do not want. Another word is spoilage. We all know to spoil, and here the context is related to the decay of food. Next word is pilferage. It is related to theft. The amount so stolen. Next word is stranglehold. Stranglehold means grip, hold, grasp, to have control over it. Stranglehold, to have control over it. Grip. Another very good word, caudal. Coddle. Caudal. Caudal means pamper, indulge. Caudal. Caudal means pamper. Another word is bogey. To trouble, source of fear. Another word is wily. 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 Wily is cunning. A cunning person. And the last very good words, nous. Nous. Meaning is intelligence or common sense. These 14 words have been used in the editorial of the Economic Times. Now we will read the editorial. Today's the Economic Times editorial 11 December 2020. The Economic Times. The headline reads, "The farmers protest a wee bit too much." A wee bit, we have seen, it is an idiom. A wee bit means by a very small amount. The farmers protest a wee bit too much. And this is the line on which editorial is based. Government has shown flexibility, so must protesters. Government has given some option to the farmers, and the farmers should also respond accordingly. They should not harden their protest. This is the theme of the editorial along which the whole story has been woven. Now, it is unfortunate that the farmers protesting against the new three farm laws have rejected the concessions offered by the government and taken the maximalist stand that their demand must be made in toto. The editorial is saying that it is unfortunate that the farmers protesting against the new three laws have rejected the concessions offered by the government and taken the maximalist stand. They have taken revolutionary stand. They have taken direct action, and their demand must be met in toto. And what is the demand the farmers are putting in toto? Whatever their demand is, that is the repeal of the act in completely repeal of the act. In toto means completely, totally, entirely. So farmers demand of repealing the three farm laws is a maximalist stand. They have also threatened to intensify the siege they have laid to the national capital if the government does not repeal the laws. Farmers have threatened to intensify the siege. This is politics of blackmail, cloaked in the pantomime garb of the brave son of the soil taking on giant corporates. Cloaked means disguised, hidden, disguised in pantomime garb. Here, silly garb of the brave son of the soil taking on giant corporates. It is being shown that farmers are confronting with giant corporate houses. It is a silly instance, and it is the politics of blackmail. So, in the first paragraph, the tone of the editorial has been set. It has been clear that what is the motive of the farmers, and they are not accepting the concessions offered by the government. Now come for the next paragraph. The government has offered that the minimum support price system would continue. Besides, to withdraw the wholly undemocratic denial of right to legal remedy in the courts for dispute under the laws. What has government offered to these protesting farmers? Their main demand or their main concern that minimum supporting price system would continue. It has been addressed by the government. It has been offered by the government that they will continue MSP system, support price system. And apart from that, they have agreed to withdraw the wholly undemocratic denial of right to legal remedy in the courts for dispute under the laws. MSP per se means in itself, minimum support price in itself does more good rather than harm. Es- Essentially, or in itself, MSP does more good than harm. But there should be no promise, but there should be no promise of open-ended procurement at MSP or fasting MSP on private traders. Main concern is fasting. Fasting means to force upon unjustifiably that private traders will also have to follow minimum support price. The state today procures about a third of wheat and rice output, and state owned grain mountains grow and rot at the same time. State is procuring a third of wheat and rice output, and we have enough grains of wheat and rice, and they are rotting. The money is spent on procurement, loading, transport, unloading, storage, financing, spoilage, and pilferage of grain far in excess of what is needed for food security is money that could be spent on healthcare, education, reform policing, the storage, processing, and transport of crops other than grain. Here, the whole sequence has been written. The money is spent on procurement, on buying, then loading, then transport, then unloading, then storage, then financing, then spoilage. These are in sequence. The money is spent on these processes of grain far in excess of what is needed for food security. And this money could be spent on healthcare, education, reform policing, the storage, processing, and transport of crops other than grain. The farmers' agitation represents the struggle of the rural elite to retain their stranglehold over a large chunk of state resources wholly irrelevant to food security at the expense of the working poor. The editorial has established the fact that those agitating are rural elite, and they are fighting to hold over a large chunk of state resources and that are irrelevant to food security at the expense of the working poor. They could have these money could have been used for the welfare of working poor. So the whole issue is has been highlighted as rural elite farmers versus government. Nor is excess procurement the only source of rich farmer cod. We have seen the meaning of the word coddling, pamper. Nor is excess procurement the only source of rich farmer coddling. They are being pampered not only in the way of procurement only. The money spent on free power, free irrigation, and subsidized farm inputs must be reckoned too. So these elite rurals are getting a lot of it other of grain, and these include free power, free and farm inputs. The bogey of wily corporate, the bogey of wily corporate jumbos trampling innocent farmers underfoot is raised to keep the conflict with the poor out of sight. Bogey means source of fear of wily corporates, wily cunning corporate jumbos trampling innocent farmers underfoot is raised to keep the conflict with the poor out of sight. This conflict between the government and the farmers is based on the premise that cunning corporate jumbos are trampling innocent farmers and the poor farmers are out of sight. Companies are not just a fact of life but drivers of prosperity as well. The editorial is writing that companies or corporates are not just a fact of life but these are drivers of prosperity as well. The point is for farmers to create organizational forms that would allow farm produce to be marketed with nows and bargaining power. The editorial suggests that farmers should create organizational forms that will allow farm produce to be marketed with nows. Nows means intelligence. Will create organizational form, they will have better bargaining power and they can market their produce with intelligence and bargaining power. The government, on its part, could offer proactive support for diversifying farming away from grain to everyone's benefit. In fact, one of the solution is to diversify crop from grain to some other crop, and that will be beneficial for everybody. So in this editorial, we can clearly see that the editorial has no sympathy for the farmers because at the very first place they are not accepting that these farmers are actual farmers. The editorial thinks them to be elite rurals or intermediaries, or they have used a very harsh word for them as maximalist, a sort of revolutionary or this type of classification. is completely neither they have sympathy or empathy. But in the next editorial on the similar topic, we will see how the tone of the editorial changes drastically. So now we are coming to the Hindu's editorial, grain and chaff or chaff. Both pronunciation are chaff and chaff, both are correct. Grain and chaff. The center must first implement its proposals before continuing talks with the farmers. Just see here, the editorial here is saying that the proposal offered by the center, that is MSP, will continue and things like that. The editorial will develop along this line that the center must first implement its proposals before continuing talks with the farmers. Both sides unrelenting in their contradictory positions, an agreement between the Narendra Modi government and the agitating farmers on the question of three controversial farm bills appears elusive. Here, both sides unrelenting, taking tough stance in their contradictory positions. An agreement between the Narendra Modi government and the agitating farmers on the question of three controversial farm bills appear elusive. Elusive means difficult to find. An agreement is difficult to find between the government and the agitating farmers, protesting farmers. With the farmers' organizations calling for a blockade of Delhi's highways to Jaipur and Agra by December 12, tensions may escalate further. Escalate means increase or intensify further. With the farmers' organizations calling for a blockade of Delhi's highway to Jaipur and Agra by decisions may intensify further. A large number of these farmers from the neighboring states of the national capital are camping at locations around it for 2 weeks now. These farmers are protesting and agitating for the last 2 weeks. After several rounds of talks, the center has now offered a written assurance that government procurement at minimum support price would remain, along with proposals to amend the laws to deal with farmers' concerns regarding parity between state-run and private mandis, registration of traders, and dispute resolution mechanisms. In fact, by the government is very clear. They have given they have given written assurance on minimum support price that will remain. Center is ready to amend the laws to deal with the farmers' concerns regarding parity between state-run and private mandis, registration of traders, and dispute resolution mechanisms. These assurances are in response to the concerns being raised by the farmers, but they find them inadequate and half hearted. Whatever whatever the concerns has been raised by the farmers, the government has tried to give them assurances on these, but farmers think that the assurances given are not adequate and these are half hearted. They have decided to intensify the strike. demanding complete repeal of the controversial laws. Presently, the farmers are asking for the repeal of the controversial law, reversal of the controversial laws, or abolishing of the controversial laws. The government has ruled out their repeal, setting the stage for a showdown or confrontation. In fact, here the tone of the editorial is completely towards farmers. It is not sympathetic but empathetic. Empathetic means they are feeling the agony and pain of the farmers. But the editorial in the Economic Times, we were finding complete apathy of the editorial towards the farmers. So these are the ways of writing things, similar things seen in two different perspectives by two different mindset of people. So what we have to do whenever we are writing, in whatever we have to write, what opinion we want to make, we have to argue in that very way. The main purpose of the reading editorial is to learn how to argue, how to give convincing points in support of one's opinion, one's proposal. Now coming to farmers, howsoever politically empowered they might be in some parts of the country, are at the mercy of market forces and government policy all the time. It is a fact. If you will move and see, you will find that the farmers are always at the mercy of market forces and government policy. The center appears willing to brazen it out. Brazen it out, again, this is an idiom. To brazen it out means to act in a bold way, as if one need not be ashamed. The center appears willing to brazen it out in the face of stiff opposition from the people most affected by the laws. In this battle of unequals, the government should look at a just settlement, not a political compromise. The editorial is asking the government to, to go for a just settlement, not a political compromise. The underlying premise of the center that farmers will be better off in an open market needs to be qualified. No country serious about food security can leave farming and marketing of produce entirely to market forces. It is very important and to substantiate that no serious about food security can leave farming and marketing of produce entirely to market forces. Even the most free market countries and the World Trade Organization acknowledge this. It is acknowledged that farmers can't be left on market forces. India's agriculture marketing and its crop pattern both undoubtedly require reforms. The editorial is acknowledging the fact that crop pattern and agriculture marketing both need reforms. The solution is to shift grain towards crops, other crops. and we have to strengthen agriculture marketing also. There is no denying the fact, and reforms are overdue. And reforms do trigger resistance. It is an acknowledged fact. Whenever you are going for a change, it will have resistance from one corner or the other. The way forward is not by questioning democracy itself, as senior government officials and functionaries of the ruling BJP have been doing. It is very unfortunate that some higher functionaries are saying that blaming the blaming the democracy for the present happening, more flexible democracy or things like that. So it is very sad commentary on these officials and functionaries. The way forward is not by questioning democracy itself, as senior government officials and functionaries of the ruling BJP have been doing. The center must be more cognizant of the fact that the farmers and the farm sector are both under its protection and they cannot be free market actors. Cognizant. Cognizant means having knowledge or understanding of something. The center must be more knowledgeable of the fact that the farmers and the farm sector are both under its protection. Farmers and the farm sector are under government's protection and they cannot be free market actors. They do not have enough leverage to protect their own interest in negotiations with big corporations. These farmers have not enough power, leverage means power, to protect their own interest in negotiations with big corporations. Our farmers need government support while negotiating with big corporations. There is no point in replacing existing distortions in the agriculture sector with reforms that do not inspire confidence among the farmers. The whole thing is about confidence, perception based upon these laws. As a start, the center must go ahead and fulfill all the promises it made to the agitating farmers rather than use those as a negotiating position. The editorial is saying that what should government do? The government should fulfill all the promises it made. It should fulfill the promises it has offered to the farmers rather than use those as a negotiating position. It must legislate the guarantee of minimum support price and reassure farmers on procurement and subsidies. The whole thing is about perception and confidence and objectivity, clarity and trust. If there is deficit of trust, then agitation will go on, and if government is heading extra mile to consider their demands, just demands. Repealing is not a suggestion, not a solution, and it is not going to happen, but their concerns must be addressed. That is the issue. If their concerns will be addressed and they have confidence in whatever government is saying, then there will be no showdown, there will be no confrontation, and the problem will be solved amicably. So through these two editorials, we have seen how a similar topic can be written in two different ways, in two completely different tones. One can be apathetic, another can be sympathetic or empathetic. and for all we have certain points. Based on those points, we put forward our justification. Next day, we will come with some another good article and we will discuss the purpose of the analyzing editorial should be in the long term. You can write this type of writing in your own way.